Hello, my name is Emmett, and welcome to the Naval Sports League. For our first time watchers, the Naval Sports League, or NSL, is the ultimate naval competition in the game of holdfast nations at war. League battles are simple. Two teams, each led by a single admiral, pilot five capital ships and two small support boats with the goal of sinking as many capital ships, those are the big ones, as they can within 35 minutes. The team that sinks more of those capital ships is declared the winner, and if there's a tie between the two, the winner is decided by the overall score. Teams consist of anywhere between 20 to 40 players, and the league provides mercenaries to balance out any number disparities between the two teams. Every player in the league, be they a team player or a mercenary, is competing hard for end of season awards and accolades. Every battle will take place on a randomly chosen map with randomly chosen wind direction. Both of these factors mean that no two battles will ever be the same. The league lasts for 9 months, starting from February and going until November, with about 3 to 4 matches a month for you to enjoy. Once that main season is over, the top three teams of the league will duke it out to determine who wins the champion's crown. The NSL is a collection of Holdfast's most talented admirals, officers, and crews, and the tactical gameplay you'll see here is at a higher level than anything else this game has to offer. We, the hosts and co hosts, will be here for the entire battle to help you understand the decisions and strategies that you'll see play out in the NSL Coliseum. So, without further ado, let's get to the pre battle coverage. Today, I'm joined by Percival Plod from the KRN, otherwise known as Percy. How you doing, Percy?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself, Amit?
I'm doing very good. It's a nice and sunny day, and it's a great day for battle. So, I understand this is your first time in the co hosting seat, but I also know that you're the Vice Admiral for the KRN, at least interimly. So, it's great to have another strategist in the casting booth with me here today.
Yes, it
Okay,
was.
so let's. Sorry, yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
say it was one of the decisions for the last match, but hopefully we'll see how it goes within the season itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into it. We've got an excellent matchup here today in a few minutes. This is season one, game six, the Royal Black Fleet versus the Leviathans. So let's go ahead and take a look at the league standings and get a sense of what's on the line for these two teams competing today.
So,
Uh,
in terms of the league standings, Leviathans are currently sitting in second place with a very strong lead after their first win of the season against, unfortunately, ourselves in the Krakens. We do have the Royal Black Fleet sitting currently about fifth in the table, but it's not.
mhm,
While it was a loss, it's not bad on the points differential. It's only about minus 1,000 or so, which means they are in quite good contention if they do manage to pick up a win today, which is could potentially be on the cards here. With some of the advantages that we might get onto in a bit, that they could actually pull up a big upset here and definitely climb the board today.
mhm. I would say that the Leviathans are definitely in a very comfortable position as they are, given that their first match of the league was a complete blowout win that garnered them a huge amount of points, and that will certainly help them fend off teams that encroach on their win-loss record. So you can be very sure that they're looking to snatch back that lead spot from the SCP-38 by winning today's match, um, for sure, absolutely. Um, the Marines' loss last week definitely did allow the Krakens to inch up to third place, as we saw. And there's still two teams that need to play the second match, which today is obviously what we're going to see: the Leviathans versus the Royal Black Fleet, and that may help us see a bit more of a pecking order starting next week. Although maybe we might need some more time on another match to for all the teams to get under the belt and really see what's happening here. Okay, so with that, we're going to flip over to the player league standings or the scoreboard and take a quick look at what's happening there.
So, in regards to the player leaderboard, we've had quite a surge in the bottom, I suppose, half of the leaderboard with one of the recent matches played, not last week, but the week before, with the KRA shooting up the board with McCandles, Verita, and Cameron, both climbing to third, fourth, and fifth place. And then we had the SCP with Spicy Paper still ahead, still looking strong up there in first place. Very strong average score, very good KDA. And we also had Vex looking very strong as well in second place. So overall, the leaderboard's looking very strong. I think we're going to come into potentially some upsets on that leaderboard, maybe going after this match. Who knows? We know there's good gunners
Mhm.
on either side. We know there's good captains on either side in this matchup. So it depends on how the match is going to go. It could be a quiet one, like we had when the, uh, the Royal Black Fleet played last time. So it's all up in the air really for the leaderboard this week, I
Yeah.
think.
All right. So since the match is starting, I really want to quickly swap over to taking a real quick look at what these teams are doing out the gate. Uh, On the west side of the map, we have the Leviathans. The wind is actually against them, going northwest, limiting their ability to do a whole lot in the initial outset of this match. However, on the east side, we've got the Royal Black Fleet, and they are doing some interesting stuff here. So, why don't you take me through what's going on the Royal Black Fleet side?
So from the looks of it, from the Royal Black Fleet, they are looking to sort of, I guess, try and form their initial line. Looks like it's a bit staggered for the moment, but I think it looks like there's going to be maybe perhaps a looks like an 8 gun line with a 13 gun sort of forming to the side of it. Potentially going to make sure that it's got more cover coming into the direction towards the islands. Certainly looks like it's trying to either mimic in some way, shape, or form the lineup coming from the Leviathans from down below, but I was just thinking perhaps a bit more that they were going to use the wind early off. Perhaps still on the cards. Obviously, it's very early on into the match, but certainly it looks like they're trying to just to get their battle line formed, while Leviathans already have theirs ready and look like they're coming into the match with some sort of fervor for this. I think.
Hmm. For sure. Also, I do want to clarify that the ship colors, the yellow ships, which are on the west side, that is Leviathans. It's the British flag,
Oh
and then
yes, no apologies.
on the east side we have the green ships. That's France, and that is the Royal Black Fleet. Um, so looking at what's happening here, what's very interesting is that we saw on the Leviathan side, they initially started to move towards the southeast, like they had positioned themselves in such a way, but I've noticed that they're now more in kind of a line and almost, I think, waiting to see what the Royal Black Fleet is doing here. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit more and see how the Royal Black Fleet's going to adjust this, but you're an admiral, so I'm thinking if you see this occurring, what is going through your mind from the perspective of the Royal Black Fleet?
I am thinking that it's going to be a tough shell to crack if you're going straight forward. You're going to want to try and force them, if you can, in any opportunity, using wind directions to try and put pressure on them from an angle they're not looking towards, and hopefully force them to make a maneuver that they don't want to make. It looks like at the moment they're trying to have a very structured approach, the Leviathans, compared to, I guess, how the SCP, or sorry, the SCP, the Royal Black Fleet are looking to crack it. It's going to be, I think, a tough ask to try and get those instincts. You kind of have to try and almost get the opposition admiral to just, I guess, second guess themselves in some ways to try and think this is going to be perhaps a faux pas or something along the lines of that, and make them second guess what they want to do to try and get them to stick from a sort of a strong defensive strategy in my mind.
Yeah, and look what the RBF are doing here now. You can see the Leviathans are still sticking. Uh, I don't know. It might be in a way a tactic used to make the RBF impatient. Gilly is a very defensive admiral. He's able to understand pacing of battles very well, but that's predicated on the fact that other teams are also moving towards them at the same time. Gilly's no stranger to dealing with aggressive admirals coming up against him, and he's very skillfully deployed his fleets against aggressive adversaries in the past in almost all of his matches. Um, but this is kind of a difference of strategy that we've seen from the Leviathans. Normally, they're very aggressive, and as I mentioned earlier, the wind is moving in the northwesterly direction. They have very few options. So, getting into the head of Lemerck, I'm thinking the same thing. Like, why am I going to try to go against the wind, put myself in a bad position? Let's just kind of play mind games with Gilly kind of here,
Mm.
and you can see it's somewhat working now. Gilly's stopping his fleet there, and it's going to be a very interesting um, development over the next 10 minutes or so to see what each of these teams does.
I think it's kind of at the moment like a little bit like a bait and switch. It's like, are you going to move? Are you going to
It
come to
really
me?
is.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those things that I don't know if they're trying to stall for time, then try to come up with a different strategy, or if we're just gonna to sit by and actually just watch whether you know they are going to try and crack the defensive line that has been put on display here. I think oh, looks like there is some sails moving in the opposition side. I am thinking that I'm liking the idea of keeping close to your spawn when you have the wind against you. You get the you get the easier reinforcements should your smaller vessels, the gunboats and the rocket ships come back. You can then choose whether you want to bring up the rocket boats for extra devastation in regards to the high damage output they have, the good targeting that you can get with, although it's random, the good targeting on sort of key infrastructure pieces, cannons, masts, that sort of thing, cause chaos and havoc, as well as the big boarding units that we have seen from the likes of the Marines very effectively this season. So it's interesting so far to see that they haven't necessarily used all the wind from the Royal Black Fleet yet. That they have, I guess, in the advantage right now, and it looks like they're trying to hold it as best as they can to see what Limerick has in store for them.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. What's really interesting about this map is like it's literally just four islands. Normally, we have maps being played where you can afford to do a little bit of cat and mouse,
Mm.
and they're greatly limited in their ability to do that here today. Um, granted, I still think that the RBF does have the ability to push the initiative. But given what we see for the Leviathans here, um, it definitely seems like Gilly is not willing. He doesn't want to fall into a trap, essentially. But I think if they want to do really well in this match, not just do really well, but um, push their way up the standings, they're going to have to take a more active and offensive
Hmm.
approach to this, as you've mentioned before. And I'm just not seeing that here from them right now. But maybe, uh, maybe I'm not being cautious enough when I'm saying these things. But uh, given how much range of wind is in their advantage, I feel like they really need to get closer and do something here to throw
I would,
the Leviathans off. I mean, the Leviathans are coming in at them almost straight a little bit.
yeah, it looks like the Leviathans in some shape or form are trying to just, I guess, split their fleet. They're obviously keeping two units together. They have the 13 gun is kind of on its own. The 8 guns are kind of again sort of close together. Obviously they're very structured approaches. I think a lot of other teams may have a far more flexible system, but I think what we see in these two teams are very, very structured approaches into how they want things to go. And I kind of think that the sort of the splitting here from the Leviathans, I don't know if they're trying to just fan out all of their 8 guns or they're just trying to reform a line, but it could be a very interesting way to try and take up more space on the map, which I think is a big sort of I think plus in this instance, trying to pen your opponent into one specific side of it, force them into positions where they don't necessarily have good angles or good cannon sort of gauges to be able to put into strong positions. It looks like the flagship of the RBF are looking to get into a position now. Perhaps maybe we can see perhaps the stalling tactic has worked. Maybe they made Leviathans a little bit more impatient, and now RBF is maybe looking to capitalize, move some of the ships out of the position, more upwind, to be able to get a different angle or vector of approach. It looks like some sails are being called now, but it's up to you. What do you think? What's your take on this, Amit, so far?
Oh, right now we're seeing the engagement between the gunboats. Mostly, the capital ships are just kind of ranging their targets, seeing where it's gonna go. Um, I don't see the KRED, or sorry, the RBF moving very much here until the Leviathans themselves get a little bit closer. Although um, this seems to be a little bit of a departure for the Leviathans gunboat strategy or small boat strategy. What we've seen in the past is that they like to supplement the damage output of lone ships by pairing them with a couple of gunboats. In this case, I could see a rocket boat out
It's
there.
two rocket boats, I
It's
think,
2
right?
rocket boats, which is definitely like if we take a look here, they have the opportunity to push into the front of the RBF's, formation here and do some damage, maybe
Very
get some
accurate
carpentier
rocket boats as
on them.
well. I would say it looks like there's some early shots landing from these rocket boats down onto the to the gunboat here, causing quite some solid hits.
Yeah,
Whether
we
that
see a
remains
little bit of panic from that, gunboat there on the RBF side.
notoriously unreliable, the rocket boats for sure, but it's very accurate hits coming through. But now obviously they've got the reinforcements coming in of the Royal Black Fleet's lead 8 gun, while the rest of the Leviathans are sort of making a very steady advance. This is not how I was expecting the match to be playing out so far. I did not expect the Rollback Fleet to give so much room, so much, I guess. They still do have the wind in bank, so that is one thing. I was expecting Leviathans to be very aggressive with rocket boats. I think we see that as of yet, or we see it now, but I'm not quite
Yeah, we're
sure whether
definitely
they look
seeing it
like they're
now.
going for the 13. Maybe that's going to be the target here. Try and get some early shots off onto the 13 and cause as much havoc and devastation in this channel. Pin them in, and then
And
slow the. Oh, go on.
And you see, I think what I mentioned before about the Leviathans and Lemerk just trying to get into the head of Gilly. Gilly obviously thinks that he's better positioned to continue. But now what's happening is that there may be an opening here for the Leviathans to move a little bit further east and then come up and move north and then gain the wind and chase
Hmm.
down the um, the RBF. And we can see where Lemerck has placed his flagship is in position to basically do a really good coverage of that opening between those two middle islands. So he doesn't really have to worry too much about the RBF formation coming through there and trying to blast them from the rear. So it depends on how far Gilly takes his fleet right now. You know, he's in the formation, he's in the lead. Usually he's captaining the 13 gun flagship. Um, so he may be taking a more active role in pushing forward his strategy here.
Hmm.
Speaking of which, what do you think he wants to do here? Is he just going to try to simply get behind Lemerck and pound them from behind? But
I
surely he
think
must understand that they're going to head north and prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I think I think trying to get behind would be a bit of a mistake. I think it's more trying to find, as we were sort of saying, the angle of the engagement, trying to find the place where they can get as many ships as they can into fire, well, like using the islands to mitigate as much easy fire coming from the very, sort of very skilled gunnery on both sides. It's going to be that engagement. As you can see here, there's more ships that have angle of fire in exchange in this 13 gun trade. I did want to. Oh, looks like that was a huge cannon shot from Spicy Paper that took out one of the ones on the 13 gun there. I am interested to see how some of the players that we were sort of looking to watch, how Shum is going to play on the carronade potentially of the 13 gun, and how Motley Fox on I believe he's meant to be on the Leviathan's 13 gun. To see how they take this engagement, because at the moment it looks like it's a very strong battle between the 13 guns with some supporting fire from the Leviathan's 8s. Looks like it's falling a tad short at the moment, though, and the fire back from the Royal Black Fleet's eights is rather limited at the moment. I'm a little bit surprised, but I'm eager to see how this is going to turn out.
Yeah, right now, currently, it is definitely just a duel between those two flagships, and for sure, it's looking like I think the Leviathans have received a little bit more damage, although it's hard to tell at this point.
Yes,
You know, it's going to take a little bit, quite a bit more, maybe another minute or so before we start to really see the HPs drop down on here. Um,
I
so, yeah, go ahead.
I think the interesting thing so far is that the rocket boats are down early now, and I don't think maybe Leviathans
Yeah,
got
they only get
quite what
two
they
of those.
wanted from them. Yeah, they only get two of them, and I don't think they quite got what they wanted out of them very early on. But that might have been the ploy to let the carpenters and the very strong gunboat crews of to get their favorites out. I think it's probably going to be the gunboats for them, and get some of those extra cannons to try and snipe off during this sort of early period. Obviously, it's closer to the Leviathan spawn right now for the Royal Black Fleet, so they're going to get harassed no matter what in this scenario. But it looks like the trade is still going for all the Royal Black Fleet heading into that 13 gun. But they are giving up the wind at this point. It's going to be interesting to see whether they try and take a very sort of large circle of death here, with them trying to take the same spot that Leviathan's just held, or what the plan is going to be from here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Critically, though, what's happening now is that those gunboats from the Leviathans are well positioned to just start hammering the side of that RBF flagship on the starboard side. Um, as we know, the Leviathans love to preserve their gunboats. They use them as massive force multipliers. And, well, I shouldn't say massive, but they certainly help. But the other thing is, you can't just discount them as being able to chip away at the enemy's HP because while that's great, it's not always their best utility. So I'll give you an example. Last week we had the actually, let me hold that thought. Look what the RBF, or sorry, the Leviathans are doing here. They're essentially pushing head on, which is not usually something you want to do against an enemy that's got at least three ships facing towards you
I think
broadside.
the angle though for the RBF is not quite in the range for
You're
the I
right.
guess
Yeah,
crossing the T. So at the moment, I'm gonna have a look, see quickly who the lead captain is for the
yes,
Leviathan's
please
fleet
do.
here.
Very
Uh,
ballsy maneuver here from them, but they absolutely have their ships
it's
online,
Atticus. It
at
is
least three of
Atticus,
them.
and he is taking the head brunt force for this. It's going to be an interesting question of whether they are going to try and they look like they're going to go and use the full wind now. And I don't think the defensiveness from the Leviathans is going to be for much longer. I think the Leviathans are going to take the position I think they always wanted to have, which is the offensive. And I don't think the Royal Black Fleet has punished them enough for it to get to that point. I don't think they've taken it in their advantage. Do you think that's going to be the I guess the difference in this match is the whole aspect of obviously we know Gilly, as you said, is a very defensive minded admiral. Do you think that was his plan all along to go into this? Is going to be constantly I want to try and make sure they are going to fight on our terms. And Lillimut came in with a defensive mindset. I think at this point he might be looking to just go full on aggression here because they have basically given like the go ahead.
Well, that's a great question, and I want to answer it, but just quickly, I want to redirect to what's happening here. We see essentially almost a reversal of what was going on there. This as I said, the Leviathans absolutely took their time. They got to the east side. Now they're sweeping back west, and it's actually the RBF who are on the run right now. They still have their formation, but it's a very tight one. So as long as they're
Mm,
able to move more northwest, they can deal with that. But the issue right now is you can see that they're getting harassed from the front, from the spawn on the west side where the Leviathans originally came
mm.
from, and that presents a tremendous risk to both the carronade on their flagship, presents a risk to their admiral. You know, last week we saw one of the gunboats from the SCP-38 shoot out two captains, the captain and the backup captain, and on a flagship for their team they were facing on the Marines,
I was
and that
murdered
was
on that
detrimental.
flagship. I
Oh,
was
you
one
were
murdered on
on
that
it.
flagship, and it was very effective, I will admit.
Yeah, that
That
flagship
one.
ran aground. Now, I don't think that's gonna happen to Gilly here. He's much smarter than that, but, um, I don't like the fact that he's pushing into the spawn area the, um where they could potentially just get boarded, which looks like it's about to happen right now,
I think the
and that could
interesting
spell disaster for his
theory is they're
formation.
using the 13 as the best, I guess, the covering ship, while obviously the rest of the Leviathans are bringing themselves in. It looks like the Leviathans are either trying to take an early turn with their flagship, thinking that perhaps
Yeah.
it's going to be safe with the current angles that are there, while looks like Gillies. Well, I thought he was going to push forward then and try and cross the T, going against the lead against Atticus here in the lead. But it looks like they're just trying to claim Leviathan's spawn area for the moment, which is something I would not have expected coming into this matchup.
Yeah, I have to say here, Percy, it's not something I would have advised because what I see happening here is, the Leviathans are just doing what they got to do and what they always do, which is make their opponent uncomfortable, whether it's at close range or further range. We can see that the gunboats are actually they're distracting the RBF, or they were for
There
the
aren't
last
many
few
left,
minutes.
though, is the only
No,
thing I
there are
will say.
not, and I think that was by design. I think the, Leviathans wanted to just by nature of the battle progressing towards this end, they distract the hell out of their enemy, and then all the while, they're just pushing east as far as they can, as fast as they can, and, they're just gonna hold them here. I think what they're gonna do is the hammer and anvil tactic where they pin down that flagship and just eat it alive, and
I
then
will
the
give
rest.
you one question,
Yeah.
which I guess would you trade? Because it looks like right now with the Gillies ship right up in the front, would you trade your flagship for all those gunboats and things like that? Because it's kind of looking that's the case right now. They're looking and putting a lot of fire onto this lead 8 gun, but it's only the 8 gun that's going to get killed in this scenario, I think, and then there's going to be the rest of the Leviathan's fleet just pummeling straight into that ship. Would you take that trade in firepower?
No, I mean, I can't say I would ever wanna position myself in such a way where I have to deal with my lone flagship has to deal with, like, 2 enemy, uh not just 2, if we're considering where they are, it
Mm.
probably been about 4 small boats they had to defend against, and then all the while, they're taking fire from these other ships, and, with while that flagships is still up on the RBF side, it's going down real quick,
Yes, it is. Concentrated fire. It's the main
and
target.
you see here the formation of the RBF isn't terrible, but I think the Leviathans are getting the edge here, especially with that front, um, 8 gun, which I believe you said was, captained by
Yes.
Atticus.
Yes, Atticus is
He's
closing off the angle very hard here. He's making
Yeah,
sure that it's
so
gonna be a lot harder for the other ships to get angle coming out of this, especially when his ship goes down and that body's there. It's still a physical object. It's still gonna make it a lot harder for them to be able to maneuver.
yeah, and you see he's not like the other eight guns for the Leviathans are kind of holding back, and
Mm.
they're doing the damage output they need to do while Atticus gets in there and tries to just cause disarray.
Mm.
And I don't know. We'll see if that works on them here. I don't think this is the worst position I've ever seen for the RBF.
We do see
Um,
though the flagship has gone down. That is 6 cannons on
yes, we
either
did
side,
see that
plus
just a
the
minute ago.
carronade, which is gone. That is 7 extra cannons in this match that are no longer available to the Royal Black Fleet. They're now going to have to really figure out what ship they're going to start to focus fire and make sure that they position themselves in time so that this Lemert flagship does not get the opportunity to get shots from the back. That is going to cause serious disarray to their lines and cause a serious amount of damage.
Yeah, and we saw that they very much Leviathans very much did sacrifice Atticus's ship, which they've been known to do that in the past. Um, if, and look what it bought them. It bought them time to get a nicer position. The flagship on the Leviathan side has a really good view of the enemy ships. There is a rocket boat from the RBF out there at the front. I believe that's I'm not exactly sure what they're doing with that because if I was with them, I'd be using that to attack the enemy flagship.
The one thing I would
Um,
say here for the RBF is that their reinforcement rate is also going to be rather low. Obviously, they are now camping inside of what used to be the Leviathan spawn, and I believe the Leviathans have not taken very kindly to the fact that it has been taken here, by the looks of it in terms of this battle.
this is home turf they're fighting for here.
Yeah, exactly. This is certainly something that they are not going to give up lightly. And you can see now that they are trying to split the fire of the Royal Black Fleet. They are sending both obviously the 13 gun and another 8 gun to try and get around behind, try to get different positions, while the Royal Black Fleet have to make the tough decision. Are they just going to keep firing on the front ship? Or are they going to try and spread their fire through the line? Um, not something I would recommend. Oh, and there's some cannons gone already.
Hmm. Here, I'll say this for the RBF: like they're not completely in disarray as we thought they might have possibly been with that charge from Atticus. So we just saw a nice explosion on the current lead eight gun on the Leviathan side. Um,
Absolutely.
I didn't see any kills there, but I mean, that, as you said, one less cannon to use. I think they've got a little bit of a fighting chance here. My concern is that they've done very little damage to the flagship on the Leviathan side, Lemerck's flagship there,
Oh,
you can see it's just laying into them. The HP on the RBF side is still looking all right, but very
HP is
quickly we're going to
fine.
see, yeah, in fact their
The
ships like
cannon total that worries me. If they start losing
yes,
cannons across
exactly.
the board, they have to maneuver, they have to reposition. I think that's what the leadership is trying to do now. I don't think they have any port side gun, oh sorry, starboard side guns to bear, and they're trying to
Yeah.
bring port side guns. They have to swivel on the spot, and it makes it difficult.
So I just want to draw attention to this rocket boat finally going in on the rear of the Leviathan's flagship, and we're going to see if that's going to help disrupt any of the fire that's raking. I don't want to say raking, but um, really laying into that eight gun on the wall from the RBF.
It looks like
Um,
it's deploying rowboats. I don't know if
oh,
they're trying to maneuver the ship a bit quicker,
actually,
or
I may need to issue a correction there. I don't think that was a rocket boat. That was actually a gunboat from the remaining gunboat on the Leviathan side.
ah, yes, it looks like it.
Yeah, my
Um,
my, my apologies there.
I believe the RBF has got one reinforcements coming all the way from spawn. I don't know whether the battle will last the entire time to get there, but it looks like with the
Yeah.
that lead ship gone for the RBF, obviously Leviathans have made sure to turn their attentions back to the lead of the fleet and just slowly but surely whittle down the cannons. Less cannons means less fire coming back. Less fire coming back means more chance for your guys to get more kills, more points, more score, and more capital ship kills.
Yes. So we currently have two capital ships down on each side, and it's currently a slugfest. What do you think is happening? And also, we can't discount the point gains that are coming out of those destroyed Leviathan's small boats. Those do have point. There is an
Absolutely.
advantage to destroying those right now in terms of um, just the straight victory condition of killing the capital ships. It is tied. However. within the next 8 minutes, we're going to see potentially. Do you think some of these ships? Oh, if we're looking at what the RBF is doing right now, I was thinking
The
maybe
back
they might.
armor is where the ships are weakest, and cannon fire going into there is going to make the pain a lot worse. So if they go straight through,
Yeah,
they're
but
going to
but
get
you were
yourself
absolutely
in the
right in your estimation that they had very few cannons left. They had to turn out if
yes.
they want to continue having a fighting chance. But that rear eight gun, as you see, has within just the past 45 seconds alone has lost over half of its HP. It will go down very quickly here.
And that wasn't the one. Oh, the rear one is the one that was getting focused the most, but the
Yes.
one that's now taking the lead is one that's going to be interesting to see where the next engagement is going to be taken, and whether sort of, because remember this is going upwind again. We've already seen the, so this is going to be going against the wind. We've already seen what it was like going upwind, and we saw Leviathans didn't want to take it until their moment, and now they're essentially got them into the point where they can use it where they want. I wonder whether going towards when we get to the sort of the interviews later on, perhaps we get an idea of what the both sides wanted to do with the wind coming into this match.
Yeah, I was really hoping to see the Royal Black Fleet here really put up another kind of a good defense there, and nothing to take away. I absolutely do think they did. It was just a matter of them losing cannons. The X are known to be some of the best gunners or the best gunners um, in the game, so I don't fault the RBF at all. It's just
No,
it's
absolutely.
just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Um, I think their ability to maintain composure here is really good. I still think they had a chance potentially had they still had cannons on that side, especially with their ship HPs. But that rear eight gun is about to go down here.
They are still focusing fire, and there is unfortunately the ship they are focusing still has all four cannons. It looks like captained by Anchigan. They have all four cannons there. They are still putting out fire. Where it looks like on the port sides, one has just gone down on the very rear ship, as you were just saying. There's a
Yes.
couple down on the one in the middle. I think that ship has now gone actually, and then there's four cannons on the lead ship for the RBF. It is a very close and tight call, I think. Obviously, there are more ships still in play now, unfortunately. But it looks like that the final gunboat has broken through the screening boat from the Leviathans, and maybe they can start causing some havoc here. It might be down to just trying to keep the points total as even as they possibly can, or as best they can, and just try and go for a much score, as many kills, as many cannons, as many points as possible to try and make sure that if this is going to be a defeat, that it's not going to be too much of a costly one.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? That plays exactly into your prediction that we were discussing prior to the battle here, which is it's not that the RBF are a bad team, and it's not that they're um, it's not that they're a bad team. It's just that the skill level and what we've seen, the tactical thinking coming out of the Leviathans is a little bit more adaptable. And at this point, it's not about if they're going to win. It's just reducing the amount of points that they're going to
Yes.
lose at, so that going into their future matches, win loss records are going to be way more favorable to them. They did a lot of work here. Let's make that clear.
I will put it this way: there are certainly a lot more ships than the Leviathans have lost currently this season in this match. I think there has been a very strong. It's a much closer game. I think the idea that they came out with was to try and, I think, frustrate the Leviathans. I think to start with, I think they were expecting the Leviathans to go full. Sorry. The Royal Black Fleet was expecting to. The Leviathans would think they were going to go full hog. Straight downwind, cause as much problem as possible. And I think that was the thing that perhaps Leviathans weren't looking at, potentially coming into this. And they've made an adaptation to this in the match. I think that's what we'll probably see coming into the interviews later. That there was an adaptation, but I don't think their plan was ever to sort of get upwind like they have and force them to take the engagement in their spawn territory. I don't think that was where this was going to be played out
No,
at all.
I agree.
But there's been a lot of fire that's been exchanged, and if we look at the scoreboard, it's very even in the top sort of echelons. Blackfriar, Spicy Paper, they're looking very strong up there, very nearly even scores. It's not completely, it's not like it's a runaway victory, this one, which is, I think, it's going to be the very interesting thing when we come to talk about this into the post game. Although, obviously, on the map, the amount of gunboats that have gone down for the Leviathans, I think, has probably going to hinder the amount of damage that they're going to take in terms of points gained. But absolutely, the Royal Black Fleet have really made sure that they're going to grind this out to get as many points as possible and mitigate
Yes, sir.
the potential point damage they're going to take here.
It's interesting because I see this paralleling the original first match in the preseason that the Leviathans had against the Royal Black Fleet. The Royal Black Fleet did a similar thing where they really took the Leviathans down to the last minute there, making sure they had to like whittle them down ship by ship. They were not allowing a blowout of a match to occur. The likes of which we had seen in the first match, the Krakens versus the Leviathans. Sorry to
Yes.
bring up bad
No,
memories
no,
for you,
I know it
but
is a raw wound,
but
but it is one that we have to bear.
yeah, so I just thought it would be funny to point that out. The first match of the preseason, the first match of season one between these two teams, while it played out almost similarly in terms of the way that the pacing and all that. Although obviously the map is way different than what we've ever seen before.
Mm.
Um, I will say I'm interested to see how other teams play on this map. This is
I think
one of
the
those things where the wind absolutely combined with the shape and the layout is something that caused that early slow game.
mm.
And
I think the simplicity of the map itself is what is the misleading part of it.
yes, we had
You
discussed
go
it. Yeah,
ahead and you look at it. You have a few islands you can duck in and out of, but majority of this match, we've only been in the islands like once or twice. The main part of the match where they were exchanging trades was going to make sure they go into the other side, the other ocean on the other side, and then when they came back down, the islands haven't really been used as much in this except for
no,
cover. It's kind of like a joust in that way. It's that you can only really fire from one side or the other. When you're doing a joust match, you are fighting on the lines, going at each other. In this case, they did swap lanes, obviously, but the trade was more so in the raw positioning power. I think I
yeah,
guess the Royal Black Fleet has
yeah,
unfortunately they did lose the trade in the positioning on the map. I think that was the only thing that has cost them here. I think they've given a very good show in terms of gunnery. As you can
absolutely.
see
I
in the
mean, we're only 5
scoreboards.
seconds left to the
Yeah,
countdown, and absolutely, they still have 2 ships upgraded. They're on their
yeah.
last legs, but they did manage to do it. Okay, let's take a look at this point differential here.
I
Not very
very
much at
close.
all. Respectable,
4K,
very respectable match. And we can
4K of
see who the
Zoe.
heavy hitters there are. Take a
Spicy
screenshot
up there.
for.
Lemerck, look at that. 13,
Yeah.
1,300 points there. Very
Well, that's the
solid.
thing is like when when you have comfort, you have the ability to basically do everything on your own terms. And I don't think the RBF were doing that. You talked earlier about setting the pace, and I don't think the RBF did that today. Once again, we know that they're a very defensive team.
Hmm.
Um, I think if you want to set the pace and have the enemies respond to you, you have to be a little bit more active. We didn't see that until more the mid. They did eventually start to move more north west, which then did allow the Leviathans to circle around from the east and then just basically reverse positions with them, which is what I was afraid was going to happen right from the start. And,
Yes.
once again, you made a great point about them being way too close to the spawn area of the Leviathans, meaning that their own small boats cannot get to them in time. As we saw, it was only about 30 seconds left on this entire match here when the rocket boat managed to finally start hitting the Leviathan's flagship.
Leviathans don't mind trading those boats because
They
they have
really do
a
not.
much
They know they have the
closer
skill.
engagement to it. Whereas if you've got your boats on the other side of the map and it's not in favor for you to get there, you're going into there with a couple of cannons that they have the advantage of, or in this case, rocket boats as well that can, cause a lot of havoc, a lot of confusion, a lot of pain, which necessarily didn't turn out into this match, but the gunboats certainly did. I think for the Leviathans, I think they caused a lot of extra panic that they didn't need to, and I think that also played a part in the positioning of their fleet coming towards it.
Yeah, definitely a great match. I think a lot of mobility throughout the mid game
Tactically very
in the
strong.
last game. I can't exactly agree with the decision from Gilly to move um, into the spawn area. Like that's something you don't really want to do unless you plan to get out of there. So we'll see what they have to say. Um, but I guess we'll just wait and see when the admirals get here.
Mm. So we saw, was
Right.
it? Oh, go
Sorry, go
on.
ahead.
I was gonna say we saw Spicy Paper look very strong. He had a very strong showing. He's also he's on the top of the leaderboard, so perhaps we'll see him again next week up there as well. Very strong
Oh yeah.
showing.
Who do we have as our heavy hitter from the opposite team?
I
Actually, you know
believe I
what?
mentioned
I
that
will.
Gilly.
That would be interesting because he was the, if I understand correctly, he is driving the flagship of his team, or he has at least in the past. It's looking like we had, I think it's Blackfriar at the very top of the, yeah, Blackfriar on the Leviathan side.
Mm.
Um, Only 3 kills, but had the highest score,
Potentially
and he
looking at
was
taking
not
in
a
very strong cannon emplacements, causing a lot of havoc that way, getting a lot of crew
exactly.
kills.
There's a lot of work you can do beyond just kills, that will get you up there. Okay, I believe we have our admirals here. Let's see. Actually, we've got Lemerck at the very least. Congratulations, sir. Well fought and well won. How are you feeling?
Thank you. Very good and very happy. This was a battle that we wanted to approach in a different way. We did, and who when you approach it in a way you've never approached it before, things don't always go according to plan. So it was really exciting.
Excellent. Yeah, and definitely, like we had predictions about how it was going to play out a little bit differently than normal, especially given the situation with the wind. The Leviathans are a very proactive team, meaning that you're often aggressive, and we saw the match play out or how it played out. But how about you take us through really quickly what you actually had planned, and then and what you had expected from the RBF?
So what you saw was our opening, which we wanted to form a defensive line close to our spawn, using the island that was closest to our spawn. We called it our lead ship, basically. So we just lined up um, with it so that it could cover our front, and we figured that with the wind that they had, the RBF would start by banking the wind, going I think south, whatever, to get deep in the wind, and then start coming at us. Realize, oh, they're just sitting there, and then try to cross in front of us in one of the either the nearest um, path between the two islands or the middle path between those two islands. But they caught onto us very quickly. They did not come very close to us, where we had two rocket boats waiting in ambush for them. And so they
Yeah,
really did a great job to counter by just not coming at us and letting us do our defensive plans. But at the end of the day, we did get what we wanted, which our motto today was make them waste their wind, right? So we wanted them to basically, you know, we talk a lot about going against the wind at the beginning so that you can swing around behind the enemy and then cut off the rear when you have the wind, right? We talk about those circles all the time and all that stuff. And so we wanted them to do something that would make them go downwind, right? Go with that wind so that then we could follow them, and then by the time they turn around, we have the wind and they don't. It didn't happen at the place or at the time that I wanted it to and that we were planning, but it did eventually happen. And then we had that moment in the middle where we had a boarding action that got on their 13 gun and cut its sails, and that is when we really pounced to get we had it just our borders just hold that 13 gun there so that we could put all of our 8 guns in range of the 13 gun, and then my 13 can get in range of the 13 gun. And once we hammered that guy pretty hard, that is when we started really feeling the momentum. And then from there on out, we just had to win by ships, because if we didn't win by ships, if we tied by ships, they would win by points because they took out every single one of our gunboats. So we really
tons.
had to
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the gunboats this time this is a very unorthodox Leviathans gunboat strategy. We usually don't do it like this, but we wanted to throw gunboats at them to delay and distract their ships from getting into good positions. But most of it just resulted in us getting our gunboats beat the hell up. So by the end of it, they were up on the points, and the only way we were going to win was just the ship advantage. And luckily, they were at the wall, and so they couldn't run and flee like I'm sure they may have wanted to do at the end there, just get the hell away from us so they could win on points. And so we were lucky that the positioning was good for us at the end. But it was a great battle. It was a great battle, and the Royal Black Fleet are
It
like
really was.
they're like our Achilles heel, man. Every time we fight them, something happens that's not what I expected,
They
and
drag you guys through the mud, man.
they
For
do.
real.
They make
I
up for
love it. I love
We
fighting
everything.
them.
talked
I
about
love
Yeah.
fighting
that.
them.
We talked about that performance they did against you in their first match. It was one of the
Sure.
earliest matches of the preseason,
Yeah, it was like the
and
second or third one.
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And they had come very close doing the same thing. I actually thought they might have had a chance here. It's just that they were so far into your spawn that they couldn't really get their other ships
Yeah.
boats in
I
there.
think them and us at a different place with their ability for them to retreat at the end battle when we had even amounts of ships, and I think they take it on points, and it just didn't happen that way.
No, indeed.
How did you feel when you came into the match? Obviously, you had I guess the way that we were describing it is it was a bit of a mind game at first. Obviously, you held your position. You
Mhm.
saw that Gilly was holding his position with his fleet, and it looked very
Yeah.
strong on both ends. Were you wanting to make the first move? Was that going to be the thing that you wanted to make sure was going to happen? Was intentional to try and throw Gilly off, or
No. So we set up our opening line aiming at the island that we did, right? And again, hoping that they would come to us and then they would get a lot closer to us before they realized they didn't want to they didn't want to
yeah,
actually fight with that line. But he
turtle
created
essentially?
yeah, turtle, exactly. He created a really great line there. The only problem with that line as I saw it is that he was facing to go with the wind, right?
Yes,
And by doing that, he you know,
signaled.
right, he signaled that there's really only one way he's going to go. He can't turn and then go against the wind so that he can't bank the wind. So then I had the opportunity to bank the wind. And that's when I started initiating movement forward towards them because I had a feeling that all they would really be able to do from that position, if we pressured the rear of their line, then the front of their line would move forward to kind of get them out of that.
Yeah.
And then we would just chase that line and then flip. We then would get the wind and then they would lose it in that chase. And so that was what I was thinking, because you could see as we approached their defensive line, we never went into range
Yes,
of any of their 8 guns or their 13 guns. All we wanted to do was create pressure at the end of that line that
and
would move
space.
them forward, right? And then as soon
Yeah.
as they started moving forward, that's when we start moving. That's when we start chasing them.
Yes.
So it was a great chess match. It was a great mental chess match between the two of us, and that's what this is all about, and that's what I love about this.
Um, I'd say my next question, I guess, is going to be towards the sort of obviously there was a different take with your gunboats today because we,
Mhm.
we know that you're very solid with your gunboats as a whole unit in the Leviathans, but I think
Yeah.
definitely this is one where I think it's going to favor, I guess, a little bit more of Pax's expertise, where he wants to get up, he wants to get close, get impersonal, he wants to get the kills on the boats, he wants to cause as much havoc as possible. Do you think that was going to be the intention, or was that something you had to switch up
It
coming into the match?
It wasn't intense. And isn't it a crime that Paxis couldn't make it today? Um,
Oh,
he
Oh,
wasn't there. He wasn't there.
oh
that's
This would
very
have
no.
been his favorite battle of the season, no doubt. But that was planned from the very beginning. You probably noticed that we took rocket boats out in the beginning
yeah,
of the battle.
we
Immediately,
did.
yeah.
We intended to have them board. We intended to have them board, and we intended to have them disrupt the operations of the enemy ships. That was always the goal, and we were willing to throw away I think what we thought was going to happen, because again, we thought they were going to go through one of those channels, the closest channel in front of the island we parked at, or the next closest channel. And so you probably noticed that the rocket boats were poised to hit either of those two channels. And so that's where we thought the battle was going to happen. But when it didn't, because again, they sussed it out very well, and they really made us come to them more. At that point, things got a lot messier for our gunboats and rocket boats than we really ever wanted. But we continued to stick to the strategy of pressure them with the gunboats and rocket boats with boarding actions, and it did end up working out when they got the 13 gun. But that was really the only time I think it really worked. the boarding action, and the rest of it was just putting damage in as they could, and then at the end we had one gunboat or rocket boat left, and we pulled him kind of out of the line of fire and just tried to have him distract any oncoming gunboats because
Yeah, it
they
looked like
still
a
had so many left.
screen. Yeah,
Yeah, it
well,
was a
it's
screen. It was a screen at the end.
because it was so the distance, I guess, is. Were you expecting the distance to be as far that the Royal Black Fleet were going to take from their own spawn to
We
be this?
wanted it in our spawn. We wanted it in
Yeah,
our spawn. It didn't get again. Did we get to our spawn in the way we thought we would? Absolutely not. We had to go much closer to them to get them to
yeah,
come back to us than I thought we would have to. But the general shape of the battle is kind of what we planned. It's just instead of it being a circle, it kind of ended up being an oval, as we had to go to them in a very long way and then turn around, and then they ran all the way back to our spawn, and then we had to chase them all the way around. Right, so it went in a weird path to get there, but that is where we ended up. We ended up where we wanted it. Because defensively, you want to be close to your spawn. If you have bad wind and you want to play a defensive game, it's better to be close to your spawn, I think.
no, 100%.
Yeah, agree
Any
entirely.
further questions, Emmett?
Sorry, continue.
I was to say, do you have any further questions that we want to offer to Lemerck?
Um, I don't. I just want to throw out a quick observation here based on the scoreboard. So, Limerick, your team won by essentially 4,000 points,
Yeah, just under.
3,964. Yeah, so not the biggest gap we've ever seen. Definitely my thoughts on this are not so much like, oh, the RBF lost. It's wow, they gave Limerick a hell of a battle there. And this, as we go forward, it's a long season, runs right up until November. This kind of gameplay, this kind of thinking from them against an adversary that's known to be very adaptable and very destructive against other teams. I think going in, this is something that's going to help them when it comes to win loss against some of the other teams. It wasn't the win that they're maybe hoping for, but it's certainly a long season, and I think
Yeah.
the RBF are going to do well.
Yeah.
I don't have any other
If I,
questions. Do you have any
if I could
last
take
remarks
off
on that?
my if I could take off my admiral hat for a second and put on my host
Yeah,
hat
go
for a moment,
ahead.
like yeah, this was an awesome battle from the RBF, and I feel like it's a total return to form for them from some of the stuff that we saw at the end of the preseason. And so like I want to give my big compliments to our opponents here today because I thought that was an awesome battle on both sides. So that's it for me.
It was a very strong battle.
Excellent.
It was
Thank you.
it was great.
Okay, and we've got from the RBF, we have FRL Splunker K. Splunker, Gilly was the admiral today, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I guess he's just not available to come, or he decided to send you instead.
In traditional RBF fashion, after every fight, we all get drunk in the tavern.
Oh,
Ah,
awesome. Perfect. You're the
you're the
responsible one.
sober.
Well,
Yes.
I'll echo the same question I did to Lermerk when he originally joined the channel. You weren't here yet, so you didn't hear it. So I'll repeat it again. How did you feel about this battle? And well, let's start with that. Let's start with your general overall feeling about the battle, and we'll continue from there.
Okay, sure, yeah. Well, first I'll actually tell you how we felt about before the battle even started.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
which is probably a good start because it explains everything that happened after the fact. The ideology for this was similar to the first battle, where we were determined whether or not we were going to be able to engage outright or try to get a point difference. And we essentially settled on that the most likely outcome for any victory would be a points difference battle rather than outright dominating the enemy. And that actually partially explains, as the battle continued on, our initial timidness to engage outright because we were trying to probe as close as we could without going into an outright engagement.
Mm.
And also, it was interesting when you were sending out your gunboats. For reference, we only had one gunboat the entire time at any given point. We only had enough crew, experienced enough and willing enough to go on one at a time, and he was sent on scouting missions to determine the placement of the enemy gunboats. And when those two rocket boats were sighted, Gilly just turned to me with my 8 gun and said, "Go out there and tear." So he sent me ahead to go take out a couple of those rocket boats before they can engage the rest of the fleet. And when we headed crossing the island chain straight, we saw that the ex-naval fleet was coming at us. And at that point, we realized, okay, we have the points. We're in a good spot to make our moves. Let's gain some distance and let's maintain our advantage. And Gilly tried to extend that as far as he could. Really did. That was always the plan from start to finish, was going to be get the points. Get the points, You don't necessarily have to sink the enemy. You just have to get good angles of fire and fire superiority. Uh, it wasn't until near the last quarter to the end when we ran out of wind where we couldn't make any maneuvers, and it turned into basically a slog, a brawl, of just who can fire the quickest and most accurately at their ships before one sank. And it was a trade off for a little while there. It was one ship sank, another person's ship sank. It was being traded. It was at the point, I think, where after we lost the 13 and the 8 gun for X and another 8 gun for us sank, where there was only, I think, 3 of us where we were given the order to turn hard to port against the wind, because at that point, if we were to go with the wind, it would be directly, it'd be like an Admiral Nelson situation. We would sail directly into your starboard.
Yes.
So it was at that point I realized that we had sort of lost the advantage. We did so well up to that point, but we just ran out of steam. Uh, and at that point, the only real way for victory would be, can you get in enough lucky shots on the enemy cannons to get the points difference and potentially sink an 8 gun? Uh, but it just didn't happen. And our single gunboat did the best they could as well to keep off any remaining gunboats from us as well, and also harass their fleet. So really, I was very happy with our performance through and through. I think that most people would have assumed that perhaps we wouldn't do as quite as well, we wouldn't perform as quite as well. I think that we kind of surprised ourselves a little bit with this one, showing even our members and the mercs that like, hey, no, if we actually take this genuinely seriously and like strategize as best as we can, we could actually put up a significant fight. Uh, that's going to bode very well for us against other teams because, quite frankly, as we all know, Leviathan X, big naval regiment, right? Not every regiment in game uh, does naval as well. In fact, almost I would say nobody does naval as well. So if we're able to perform like this against one of, if not the top regiments in naval, it bodes very well for us in the future, and I'm real excited to see.
I would
Awesome.
completely agree with that whole sentiment. Very, very good showing today. Very strong.
Yeah. I want to break that down a little bit. Let's start with your end off there. As a very optimistic and positive note, I think that's absolutely well warranted. A little bit of humbleness there too. The vast majority of matches I've seen from you guys, both in the preseason and so far here, I mean, this is only your second match, has been very measured. You know, you're not really losing by a ton in these matches if you're losing at all. I want to circle back really quickly to the beginning where you mentioned you only had one boat out, and I noticed that in the beginning, but I just assumed that maybe my eyesight's starting to go, and you guys had something somewhere else. So yeah, I am saddened to hear that you were only able to manage a defense with one of those, but it seems that the utility you got out of it was very well uh, put to use. I did have another question though about your maybe Gilly would probably be able to answer this a little bit better, but you remarked earlier about how you guys kind of ran out of room to work with once you start to get onto the west side of the map towards Leviathan spawn. Do you think that Gilly had ever intended to end up in that position or end up on that side of the map and just stay there?
Well, I think, like I said, wind is kind of like fuel. You eventually will run out. Um, it was it was almost necessary for us to make our way to that end of the map because keep in mind, when we were moving around the right side of that island chain, which kind of segments it into halves on each side of the map, uh, we wanted to keep the speed and distance, and to do that, we needed the wind. And for that reason, the wind just took us towards your spawn. And again, it's like going back to the whole mindset. We're still in that mindset of we need the points. We're not out to fight them wholesale. If we were, we would have cut center of the line, sharp to port, and engaged outright, right? And start doing circle maneuvers around the island chains and just engaging fire. Uh,
Hmm.
but it's just the mindset that we went into going there was very strong. It's just that we didn't have enough time to get the damage in that we needed. We didn't have the right amount of accuracy to get the amount of shots that we needed. It was I wouldn't say it's by chance, but it was very much down to the individual that pretty much determined this. It was down to the individual cannoneers, where they were aiming, how fast they were shooting. At a certain point, it got down to a one-on-one fight between our cannoneers versus your cannoneers. Our ship captains versus your ship cap. It was
That's exactly
it,
what
it
I was
gets
telling Percy in the stream. It seemed like once you got to that point, I really thought there was a chance for you guys there, and there certainly was. It's just as you said, it comes down to tit for tat.
Yeah, and that's almost the best way to do it, right? Nobody ever everyone always worries that whenever they fight, they're going to get completely slapped out of the arena without even a chance to show. Uh, and we didn't let that happen. So I think that it was good
I
all
think
all
you've
around.
sent a very strong message to the rest of the, I guess the league itself, that you are here to be feared. I think putting up very strong display, today was the best thing that you guys can do, and even in in a defeat, it's one of those things that you guys are going to take. And as you were saying earlier, if we've done this against what people say is probably the strongest naval regiment out there, what are we going to do against other teams? And I think that is going to be the incredible mindset for you guys to go on forward with the
I
rest
can't
of the
yeah,
matches this season.
and I can't give you a specific answer as to what we're going to do because that's strategy. But I can guarantee you one thing that will definitely happen in the future.
Fantastic.
We're gonna tear. We're gonna tear. We're gonna
The
tear.
dramatic
Absolutely.
pause. Yes.
Jump scare.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming along, Splunker, and getting us into the mindset of what you guys are going in. Very, very respectful, very thoughtful approach. Definitely, as Percy said, sends a message to the other teams. We are not to be trifled with, and I seriously think you guys also had a chance against my team, the SCP-38, in the first match. Um, the potential was there to really sink my ship and take us out of the battle there. So, you guys are a great adversary to go up against.
Yeah.
Uh,
And before I forget, I just want to congratulate X for the win today, Leviathan. Good job. I look forward to competing with you guys in the future, and I look forward to helping you in the future as mercs.
Right back at you.
Isn't that nice? We
That
can all
is
be
very,
friends.
very good. Absolutely, that's what it's all about. Until you're on the water, then there's no friendships.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Admirals, thanks for coming out. We're going to move you along and we're going to get onto our roundtable with our correspondents and see what they saw, what they were thinking, and facilitate a short conversation about where they think things are headed for both of these teams. Okie doke. So let me introduce those correspondents. Today we had Piet, as always, veteran correspondent. We also had Swaggington from the KRN and Wavy from the KRN, and we did have Lucius, although he had to bounce really soon. Um, so welcome all three of you. Thank you very much for your contribution of time today. I'm going to call on Swaggington to give us his initial overview of what he saw and what he thought of the match.
Alright. I agree with a lot of what everyone said so far, and that it has been a quite impressive performance by the RBF this time round. Very small point difference there. And I wanted to note on something Spelunker said actually with the delaying the engagement, because it seemed that was just the perfect amount of delay, because any less and like both of the 8 guns at the end there were on a slither of health. If that delay didn't happen, both of those ships would have sunk and the point difference would have looked a lot worse. So the delay and the sort of probing them was probably the best strategy, I think. So, yeah.
Awesome. Wavy, what do you think?
I think it was probably the most cautious battle that I've seen in the NSL so far, certainly from the RBF's point of view. And I really hope that when we fight X on that map in the future, they're also that cautious and give us plenty of time to get ready. Sadly, I don't think they will be, but no, it's a good showing from both teams.
Piet, what do you think? Because sometimes we see, today we saw a bit of a very slow, methodical look from both teams at, let's see what they're doing, then we'll adjust based on that. And then some teams, you'll see that they have an initial strategy and they stick to it, hell or high water, whether it goes well or not. How do you think well, what did you see today, and where did you what was your favorite part? I guess essentially of what was going on here.
Well, to be honest, sorry, there was one problem. But as I could see, is that I was really surprised that the Leviathans were trying to board almost constantly. I was really surprised by seeing it, that practically from the beginning all the way to the end, they still try to board. They still try to send boats against the Black Fleet ships. I was really surprised seeing that, but also I was surprised that Royal Black Fleet was unable to man the second boat. But to be honest, that one boat that they have, they really do their job really well, especially at the beginning of the match.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a different approach, as Lemerck had outlined for us, and one that the RBF didn't exactly fall into the trap with. Okay, well, thank you all for your thoughts. Does anybody have any additional thoughts? Maybe Percy, you want to jump in here?
Um, I think that we saw from this was I guess a masterclass in how to draw a match out, how to just keep position within the league itself. I think if you feel that you're coming into a game that you feel that you might be an underdog in, or you might be I suppose even though if you have an advantage, you're still, I guess, potentially worried about, an upset if you have like the wind advantage or something. Like this was a masterclass from both Leviathans and the Royal Black Fleet on how to do game management to make sure that your league standing doesn't get affected too badly. And I think that's going to be something that might actually, for those admirals and players that watch the games back and analyze them, that's going to be something that's going to be, I think, a big thing that we'll see potentially in the matches to come in the next coming weeks.
Absolutely.
I have a thought on the
Right.
gunboats as well, just quickly.
Oh, go
Uh,
ahead.
I
Absolutely.
think the use of just the one gunboat actually might have benefited the RBF here, because it gives a lot more focus and control on the one, and it loses that potential point difference in it getting sunk more regularly with two out on the field. So I don't know. I think maybe one gunboat was actually a good idea, but we'll see.
You know, on that topic, a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of the teams I know of, including my own, we often just give an entire gunboat to one of the just mercs and let them go out there. So whether or not we're really telling them what to do, I know Muffin Top does try to give them instructions on what to do. Um, you still think, given that, Spunker had said that they didn't have enough folks to run that second boat, do you think that was just a personnel issue, or should they have tried at least maybe one or two mercs, put even one guy on one of those boats that might have done a little bit more, right? Distract the enemy a little bit? Is there any, do you think it would have been worth doing that?
I think if you have a solid idea of what to do with the one gunboat, I think it's probably fine just to keep to the one rather than chuck some people on a second one and sort of let it go do its thing. Keep a bit more constrained. It, let's say, reduces that point difference potential.
Yeah, and they are small boats. I give you that. But they possibly could screw up your strategy if they start to do something that causes the enemy to go in a direction that you don't want them to. So,
Mm.
good points all around. Okay, so let's take a look at the preview for next week. We have coming up the Jackals of the Baltic Sea versus the SCP-38 on Diamond Isles. That's a map that we saw 3 weeks ago. Jackals of the Baltic Sea already played on that one. So that's coming to you April 13th. That's Sunday, April 13th next week. And I believe Lemerck will be back in the hosting seat, so you'll get to hear his illustrious voice as usual, and his great co-hosts. I also want to give thanks to our director, Mr. Dr. Professor, our arena manager, Muffin Top Scout today, and our correspondents, which I did introduce. So, Wavy, Swaggington, Piet, and Lucius, if you're listening, thank you very much for coming out. And a big, hearty welcome. First, welcome to Percy. It's his first co hosting experience. I think he knocked it out of the park. And so thank you to
Team
him, and of course we
places.
have to thank the viewers as well. So, if we're doing this, I can see the stream. Quite a few people watching right now. So thank you all. Please like and subscribe, or subscribe on Twitch, and check out the YouTube channel as well. So where these
Absolutely.
are posted. All right. Any final comments from you, Percy, before we end this out?
I want to thank you. As you say, it's my first time, so I hope that we did all right in terms of this.
We
As
certainly had
always,
the rug pulled from under us right in the beginning. There's a little bit of issues that get resolved for next time. Don't worry.
that's all right. And as I
I
say,
hope you had a lot of fun though.
yes, it was a lot of fun. I do quite enjoy doing these behind the scenes as well, and for my own amusement. So actually being able to do it and bring it to the stream today was a big thank you to the team involved for making that happen. And hopefully, if, maybe I'll be able to come back and do more. But hopefully that's in time. I think we had a great match today, and I can't wait to see what's coming up next week. It sounds like it's going to be an exciting matchup, and I can't wait to either play in it or be able to be on the camera to watch it during it while it's happening.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you to the NSL Commission for allowing us the opportunity to bring this production to you from our perspectives. And with that, we're going to wrap up this week. This is Amit checking off.